Night Express is quite a strategic and economical game where you are trying to build your own train lines, buy your own Night Express trains, and make your economy flourish. This game here will soon be out on Kickstarter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set it up and how to play it. Now, what I have here in front of me is just a prototype, so once you get this game on your table at home, it might look a little bit different. But it's a well-made prototype, and it will give you a good idea on how this game will play out. So let's take a look at this cool game. We start by placing out the route map in the center of the table. This is where we will be building our train routes. We need to place out the card display board. This will be used in step 1. Next we have the train display board. This is where the train that we will buy will be displayed. We also need to place out the route cards. Now, these route cards here will determine where we can build a route. And these are placed out determining on how many players we are. They are placed out on the board, faced down. If we are 2 players, only the yellow routes, meaning 16 cards, should be used. If we are 3 to 4 players, then we should use the yellow and green routes. With 5 to 6 players, we need to use the yellow, green, and blue routes. So next we have the trains. And the trains are selected and offered to players according to rounds and number of players, because at the end of these trains you can see some numbers. For example, here it says 1-2 to 6. This means that this train is used in the first round and with the amount of 2 to 6 players. But some of these will have less and more, meaning that you won't be able to use them all. This one here, for example, is round 1-4 to 6, meaning that it's only used with 4 to 6 players in round 1. Next we have the event cards. As you can see, there are some different symbols in the top. These ones here says 1, 2, 4. And these ones here says 3 to 4. The ones with the 1 to 4 should be placed out on the route map itself. But the rest of them are placed next to the board. Next we have the specialist cards. As you can see, these are split up into 1, 2, and 3. And just like we did with the event cards, we need to place the ones with 1 face down on the route map. The ones that says 2 and 3 are placed face down next to the board. We need to place out secret route cards as well, face down. And again, depending on how many players we are, we should have a special amount of cards. And you can see which cards you're supposed to use by simply looking at the back of the deck. Next we need to place all the tokens and the monies next to the board for all players to easy reach. Next we have the player setup. We need to take one of these player boards. This is where we later will place our trains, but also our different routes. We need to have bidding cards. These are cards that you will use when you bid and buy trains. The starting player gets the starting player token. We need to take 30 money at the start of the game. But also this little player screen here. This screen will be used to block out the other players so they can't see how much money you have. We need to take this route evaluation card. I will tell you more about this in a bit. We need to take 2 action meeple, 4 passengers, we need to take 4 service points, and also our route markers. Plus you need to take your victory point tracker and put on the starting field on the route map. So in this game you are trying to build your own train empire. You will do this by getting routes out on the route map, but also by getting different trains. You will put out your little service points, you will get passengers, and so on. This game is played out during 4 rounds, and each of these rounds is played out during 6 steps. So let's take a look at the first step. If we start by looking at the route map, we can see that these routes have different colors. We have green, yellow, and blue. Now, the yellow ones are used for 2 players. The yellow and green are used for 3 to 4 players. and all of them are used for 5 to 6 players. Now, if we look at the route cards, we can see that they also have colors. And we should of course only use the route cards with the colors out on the map that we are using, according to our player count. All the other cards needs to go away. So step 1 in this game is route selection, but also to set out your service points. Now, the starting player should draw route cards according to the numbers of players plus 2. Meaning that if you're 4 players, we should draw 6 cards. But if you are 6 players, we draw a maximum of 7 cards. These cards are then placed out faced up out on the card display board. Now, each player in clockwise order gets to choose one route, and this route must be used in your current turn. The cards that was not chosen during this turn are removed from the game. Once you have chosen which route you would like to have, you place it in your top left corner on your player board. Now, let's take a look at these cards and what the symbols mean. So on these route cards, we find a bunch of information. In the top, we can see which cities this route connects, and it consists of 2 sections of routes. Here we have Wien, München and Paris. Now, some of these route cards actually have only 1 section of routes as well. If we look here in the middle, we can see the number of passengers, which means that in the beginning you can fill up 11 passenger wagons of a train with passengers. Next to this, we can see the travel time. And depending on which travel time you have, you can get more or less victory points. And they range from +3 victory points if you are at 7 hours of travel time. But in this case here, we can see that we have 11 hours, which gives us a -1. The shorter travel time, the better victory points. It just makes sense, right? These 2 points here, we can see with the colors, they indicate which part of the network the sections of the routes belong to. In this case, the yellow. Over here we have another symbol. This is the IIHSP, and it indicates that this route is a route of the high-speed network. With the right train, you can gain additional victory points here. Now, these passenger symbols here out on the sides, they indicate what amount of passengers you will lose if you share this route with another player. The top one is if you share it twice, and the bottom ones is if you share it 3 times. Now, these 2 sides are not added together. They are separated, meaning that one side counts for one side and the other side counts for the other side. This means that if you share this route to the left with another player, well, you will have a -2 passengers. But I will show you more about this in a bit. The last one down here means that you can attract additional passengers. And you can do this by using advertising in step 3 when you upgrade your routes. So now we have our routes, but we also need to mark out on the route map where we have these routes. Meaning that now we should place out our little markers here out on the map and also see if we share that route with another player. Let's take a look at that. So the yellow player chose this route here between Wien, München and Paris. But as we can see here, the red player already got their marker on this route. So the yellow player must accept that we will now lose 2 passengers. The yellow player needs to take the -2 marker and put on their route card on their player board. But we also need to put out our player markers, marking the route between Wien, München and Paris. Besides setting out the tokens on the route map, we also need to put out our passenger markers. Now, we got 11 passengers from this route, right? But we also got a -2, meaning that we end up with 9 passengers for this turn. So now we have a route. We have placed out our stations and we have indicated how many passengers we have. But we also need to build one of these little service buildings. If you are playing this in professional mode, you may only have one of these buildings per station. Meaning that if another player has a service building built in the station where you want to build, well, you can't because they have already built there. And you need to have a service building to be able to use that route. However, you can rent another player's service building. If you do that, you need to place your disc beneath their service building, indicating that you are renting their space. And from now on, until you can build your own service house on that route, you need to pay 1 victory point to this landlord at the end of this step each round. But you can build your own service point in the future to get rid of that rent. So you will pay 1 rent and the landlord would gain 1 rent instead, meaning that they gain a victory point and you lose a victory point. But if you can build your own service building out on the station, well then you simply pay 5 money and then you put your building out on the spot you would like to build it. So that was step number 1. We got our little routes, we put out our stations, we put out our little service buildings here, and now we go into step number 2. This is where we are going to bid for trains. And here we are going to use our bidding cards. Now remember, I said that you have 7 bidding cards. And they go from X up to 10. X being that you are not interested at all in the train that you're bidding on right now. And all the way up to 10 when you are really, really interested in the specific train. But let's take a closer look at this. So now the bidding starts. And each player chooses one of the bidding cards and put them out in front of them face down. Then, when all players have placed their cards, we reveal what our bid is. Now, the player with the highest number will win the auction. But we can only win the auction if we can actually pay the price of the train. And you also need to pay the surcharge for actually joining this bidding. The surcharge being the number on your bidding card. Now, if you win this bidding with the number 0, you do not have to pay any surcharge, but you need to pay for the train, and you cannot refuse to buy the train. Once you have paid any surcharge and for the train, you take the train and place it on your player board next to your route that you just got in step 1. We also need to make sure that the train we're buying's arrow is matching up to the arrow on our station. Then the auction will continue for the trains that are left. Each player must purchase 1 train. If you cannot afford any train or simply don't want to pay the price right now, well, you can also lease the train. On these trains there are a leasing cost, and you will have to pay this leasing cost in victory point for each round that you are leasing this. You will also have to take a little token and put on your train as a reminder that you are leasing this train. And you will keep on paying victory points until you actually have the money to buy the train. Let's look at these trains to see what all of this information actually means. To start with, here we have the buying price that we just saw before. Next to it we have the space for the leasing token and the price for leasing. Over here, this is our upgrade options in step number 3. We will talk more about this in a bit. Here you can see the number of passenger wagons. And this corresponds to the windows on the train. They are all marked with victory points. Each window represents a passenger wagon. And the orange meeple here that is placed on the platform represent the passengers that you are carrying in this round. But also which window you will get victory points for. This one down here we're already going over. This says in which round this train is used and for how many players. Lastly, down here we have special wagons that you can purchase depending on their availability in step number 3. where we upgrade the routes. And with that we enter step number 3, and this is where we get to upgrade our routes. And we will do that by putting our little action meeples here out on the board to do different actions. So these here are the actions that we can do. And we will take these actions by simply taking our little action meeple and put out on one of the available spots. If we're playing 2 players, only the yellow spots can be used. But if we're playing 3 to 4 players, we can use the yellow and the green spots. And if we're playing 5 to 6 players, the yellow, green and blue spot can be used. So now the starting player would go first, placing out their little action meeple on one of the 7 actions that they would like to do. Once they have done their choice, the choice goes over to the player on their left, and they will put out their meeple as well. This is the way we go around the table until we come to the last player, because when they have placed their meeple, it will go counterclockwise now instead, until all players have placed out their 2 meeples. Now, on most of these spots out here, there can only be 1 player per action, but some of them has exceptions. Plus, on the starting player action, you cannot place your first action meeple. That one can only be placed on the way back again, because otherwise the starting player could just become the starting player over and over again, which just makes sense. But let's look at the actions. So the first action here would be to become the first player in the next round. And this one here is not resolved right now, as it would first take effect in the start of the next round. The second one here is the special wagons, which will allow you to upgrade your wagons, meaning these ones over here at the end of your train. Now, if you have already covered these up on the train, you can of course not cover them up again. And you can only upgrade 1 of your trains per action. But how do you know which ones you can choose and what the cost is? Well, then you would need to look at this little help sheet here. Here we can see that if you're standing on the yellow meeple, well then you can choose from all of them, because yellow is on both sides. But if you're standing on the green and blue action field, well then you will only choose from the right side. And here you can also see that there is a cost. This small one up here will cost you 4 coins, while the bigger one down here will cost you 7. Once you have chosen which ones you want and which one you can afford, you need to take the corresponding token and put it out on the train you would like to upgrade. Now, you will also score every round from this token. Here you can see that you will score 3 points. The second action we got over here is to upgrade our service points and also give us more victory points. You will indicate that you have upgraded your service points on a specific route by placing this little token here. Now, this service point gives you an additional 2 victory points on each route for which it is used. But to be able to get these service points, you also need to pay the amount stated out on the action spot itself. In this case, 4 money. But you can only have 1 service point plus token per route, as you only need 1 service point per route. And then we have advertising. Here you can attract more passengers to your routes. The first one, the yellow step, will let you choose. You can pay 4 coins to get 1 extra passenger, or 7 coins to get 2 extra. On the green and blue one, you can only get 1 extra passenger and pay 4 coins. Once you have chosen the spot and paid the money, you place this little token on the route you would like to add more passengers to. Plus, you move the little meeple here up the amount of steps that you have added passengers. In this case, 2. Next one we have is options. And here, you again get to upgrade your train, if you have available spots on your train. And you can only upgrade 1 of your train on your player boards. This time we need to look over here to make sure that we have the free spots needed to be able to place a new token. We would place it by simply laying it on the train we would like to upgrade. But again, we would need to pay a price. And we can again see how much we need to pay by looking on this little help sheet here. But also to see which options we have available. But just be aware here, because here you can see that you can choose up to 4 options. But on the red and blue one, you can only choose 2. And then we have insurance. This one will trigger during the event phase in this round. And it will cost you 2 or 3 money, depending on which spot you put your little meeple here. And the insurance will protect you against negative event cards during the current round. And then we have the last spot, and this is simply where you gain 3 money. I hope that you have paid your insurances, because now in step number 4 we come into the event phase. And some of these events might be quite negative for you, but if you have an insurance, well, you will be alright, right? So in this phase here, the starting player will draw event cards and hand them out to the other players. So now the starting player will draw the top card from this deck and hand them out, starting with himself, and then going clockwise, handing them out to the other players. Now, in a professional game, you will start with the cards that says 1, 2, 4. And when you come to round number 3, you will shuffle in these cards as well into the deck, making this game a little bit more vicious. But in a beginner game, you will only have this. Now, these event cards here will affect the route that you have most recently received. So in this case, this one here. Some of these can be taken care of right away, for example by paying money, for example by simply paying money or getting rid of passengers. But some of these will last you the whole game. Now there are quite a few symbols on these event cards, so let's just look over them quick. These 2 up here will have you either lose passengers or gain passengers. These ones down here will let you either lose 1 or 2 passenger wagons on your train. Here you would need to place wagon lock markers on your last victory point board off your train to indicate that you have lost them. Down here you will lose or win victory points immediately. Down here you will gain or lose money immediately. This one down here, you need to choose either of taking money or victory points, meaning that either you gain money or you gain victory points. So it's quite good. With the events taken care of, we now move into step number 5. And this is where we score for this round. So now we need to see how many scores we have gotten here. Now, when we count our passengers, it is important that these lines are matching up, so we get the right amount of passengers, because now you will score for that amount. I have 9 passengers, giving me 10 points. But I also have a leasing, giving me a minus 6 points in this case. Down here I will get 7 points. And I have no leasing, so I do not have to withdraw any points here. But as you can see, I have also some upgrades on these trains, and we need to add them now as well. If I would have had the high-speed symbol upgrade on this train, I would have gotten an extra 3 victory points, since this route has the high-speed network as well. But in this case, well, I did not make that. And we also need to check the route cards themselves, if we have managed to get any extra victory points here, from, for example, time, or from upgraded service points, as these here would give you extra 2 points. We then write down the results for this round on this little sheet here. But we would also need to move our little meeple up on the board. And now we're down to the last step of this game, the 6th step, and this is where we choose a specialist. We need to draw the same amount of cards as we are players, plus 2. Meaning that if you are 4 players, you should draw 6 cards. But if you are 6 players, you only draw a maximum of 7 cards. And now we start to draw cards, but we don't do this in player order. No, we do this in the order of how much victory point we have. Starting with the player that have the least amount of victory point. Then they get to choose a card that they would like to play. Once they have chosen, we go up to the second player that have the second most victory points, and then they get to choose a card as well. And then we finish up with the player that has the highest amount of victory point, and then they get to choose a card that they would play. And these cards are played and used immediately. The cards that were not chosen are removed from the game. And that's the way the game goes on until we come into the final 4th round. And then we need to do some end of game scoring. Remember these secret root cards that we got at the start of the game? Well, now it's time for us to see if we have reached any of these goals. If we haven't reached any, well then we get 0 points. If we have reached 1, we get 5 more points. If we have reached 2, we would get 15 extra points. Once we have checked that, we also need to see who has the best route, meaning which route scores the most victory point. If you have the best route, you will get 5 extra victory points. We also need to see who has the most trains. If you have the most trains, meaning the most wagons, the biggest train fleet, well, you would get 5 extra victory points. And lastly, if you have the most money, you would also gain 5 more victory points. And that's how you play Night Express. Now, this game is quite strategic and there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things to keep track on. And if you're into economy games where you really need to make sure that you have just the right level of passengers, routes, service points, and everything that upgrades and everything, well, this game is just for you. I mean, this here is quite an advanced economy strategy game. And there you have it, that was Night Express. And the box says a deep economic strategic board game. And I would say that this is just that, because there is a lot of planning here, there is a lot of strategy. You need to manage your money, you need to manage your routes, you need to manage your loans. Man, those loans can really be a pain for you. You need to take care of the loans, but also the events, and you do not know what happens in the events because there's a lot of things that can, well, happen to you. So better get some insurance, right? There's a lot of things to keep a track on, and I would say that if you like Ticket to Ride kind of games, but you feel like they're too light, you should check this one out, because this is a quite heavy strategic economic game that I think that you are gonna like. If you like this type of game, of course. If you want to know more about the game, well, check out the links down in the description and it will take you straight to that game's side. This game will be out on Kickstarter soon, so there's a lot of things to check it out. If you like my video, well, be sure to just give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, throw in a comment or whatever you want to do. But most importantly, my friend, please remember to keep on spreading that board gaming love I know you all have. Peace out.